In this video, we'll examine the Big Five personality traits and how our self-assessments can provide helpful information to counselors and their clients as they work to improve the client's relationships. When we studied attachment styles, we learned there are 4 different styles. 3 of them are forms of insecure attachment. As we transitioned to learning about personality traits, we selected the Big Five as the focus of our study. As with attachment styles, you may see different labels for the 5 primary personality traits, but our tools utilize the trait names you see on this slide. Where did we get the Big Five? Over a period of many years, researchers and analysts studied the words people use in everyday speech to find those words that are more important to those people. These efforts are based on the lexical hypothesis. We're going to put the lexical hypothesis on the screen, and it's kind of wordy, so pause the video and read through the 2 components of this approach to studying personality traits. Resume the video when you're ready to continue. The original researcher who used this strategy to develop the first iteration of the Big Five is Sir Francis Galton. While the Big Five traits have undergone some refinement since Sir Francis completed his work, they remain basically the same. They have been validated in most cultures. However, some concerns have been raised about their appropriateness for cultures that are less urbanized. For our purposes, the Big Five provide valid and reliable measures of important personality traits. Decades of research has identified narrower traits that comprise the Big Five. This slide identifies the most useful of these narrower traits. They are called facets in the literature to distinguish them from the higher order traits that make up the Big Five. The APT self-assessment on the Big Five personality traits includes items that address most of these facets. Being able to drill down to the facet level is one of the major advantages to using the APT self-assessments, as most inventories and online quizzes only return results at the trait level rather than the facet level. For example, both partners in a relationship may score 75% on conscientiousness, but one partner may score high on orderliness and self-discipline, and low on self-assurance and achievement striving, while the other partner's scores are the opposite, that is, low on orderliness and self-discipline, but high on self-assurance and achievement striving. Limiting the results of the self-assessment to the trait level would lead you to believe these partners are much alike, when in fact, they are quite different. The theory behind attachment styles tells us these patterns of behavior are developed during our earliest childhood as our interactions with our caregivers form our working model of the world. It's likely that there is some genetic predisposition towards some patterns, but for the most part, they are generated in response to our environment. Is this the same for personality traits? Pause the video for a moment and think through how you would respond to this question. What proportion of each trait is inherited? Resume the video when you're ready to see some data that answers this question. The findings in this graph are from an older study completed in 1996 by researchers in Canada. They studied 123 pairs of identical twins and 127 pairs of fraternal twins. There are other studies that found different proportions of each trait attributed to genetics, but the proportions were not significantly different. We have confidence in the findings of this study because of its use of a large number of twins. There are 2 main obstacles to obtaining valid information through self-assessments. The first is cognitive in nature. That is, can the client understand the items? The second obstacle is situational. This refers to client concerns about who will see their responses and any judgments that person may make about them based on those responses. Here's how we deal with these two obstacles. A readability check of APT items ranged from 6th grade to 10th grade, meaning most of your clients will have no difficulty understanding the items. The My Drive we use allows only the client and counselor to see responses, although the partner may also see the results if the client consents. 4 additional factors contribute to the validity of self-assessments. We use a continuum structure which allows clients to identify their emotions and beliefs more precisely. The self-assessment can be completed in stages. Clients can complete all or just a few of the items at a single setting. They can pick up where they left off whenever they're ready. This makes responding seem like a manageable task. The items stimulate reflection. By providing statements for clients to select from that reflect a wide range of feelings and beliefs, clients are encouraged to ponder and clarify their own thinking and emotions. The self-assessment format creates greater client buy-in. A self-assessment will feel more acceptable to clients as opposed to an assessment completed by someone other than the client. This produces greater commitment to the plan you and your client develop from the self-assessment data. Based on our experience, a few of your clients may be reluctant at first to complete the self-assessments. When you sense hesitancy, you'll want to gently probe to find the rationale. Knowing why the client is reluctant to respond is essential to choosing the right way to support this person. Some clients may feel more comfortable if they know exactly what the self-assessment will ask of them. Just showing them the setup of the self-assessments may be all that is needed to encourage them to complete it on their own. For others, you may need to show a sample of the results and explain how you've used them with other clients. It's a good idea to remind them the website will save their work so they can complete a few items and come back to it later. For the most reticent, you may want to offer to open one of the self-assessments and complete a few items together. This might involve talking through any uncertainty the client might have about selecting a response, or it might be as simple as being available if the client has a question about one of the statements. Both self-assessments have the same number of items and use the same structure with 3 statements on each row. Clients use a 10-point scale to indicate the statement that most closely reflects how they see themselves. You can see there are 3 numbers under each statement. This allows respondents to report the extent to which the statement describes them. If, for example, they think the first statement in the row describes them exactly, then they might input a 10 in the green shaded cell. If the statement is kind of like them, then they might type an 8 in the green shaded cell. There are also numbers in between each pair of statements. Clients who feel both statements describe them to the same degree would input the number in between, either a 7 or a 3. Both self-assessments generate a graph that provides a high-level profile of the client's attachment style or personality traits. We have a key that shows us which attachment style descriptor or personality trait facet is being measured by each item. This allows us to create a more in-depth analysis at the counselor's request. Charlotte and Derek are going to help us with this exercise. Pause the video and think through your answers to these 3 questions. What can we learn about Charlotte and Derek from their personality trait profile? What are the most obvious trait areas where Charlotte and Derek might experience conflict? And what would you suggest to this couple as concrete steps they can take to improve their relationship? Resume the video when you're ready to hear what we think about this couple. Let's take a closer look at Charlotte. She scored high in openness to experiences, so while we don't have facet level data from the graph, we know she has some combination of curiosity, inventiveness, talent or appreciation for art and music, and intellectualism. She's likely to be fairly dutiful and orderly, but not obsessively so. And because she's introverted, Charlotte processes information in her own mind rather than talking it through with others. She probably gets tired at parties and large social events. She may be argumentative or contrary, as her agreeableness score is quite low, and her emotional inclination score indicates she has more negative emotions, such as anxiety, frustration, and depression, than positive emotions. Now, for Derek. His score on openness to experiences is only slightly lower than Charlotte's. He is more inclined to be orderly and self-disciplined, and for all practical purposes, he and Charlotte have the same score on extroversion. However, he is much more agreeable. This means he is likely to be more compliant, more earnest, and more compassionate than Charlotte. Finally, his emotional inclination score is significantly lower than Charlotte's. He is much less likely to experience anxiety or frustration, and he won't be irritable very often, and he won't be as self-conscious in social settings. The traits where they're likely to experience conflict are agreeableness and emotional inclination. In practical terms, their conflicts may arise when their moods clash. That is, Charlotte may feel down or frustrated, and while Derek has a good bit of compassion, he may not be able to empathize with Charlotte's negative emotions because his tend to be quite positive. Because he's so agreeable, he may try to get along with Charlotte's negative emotions, but they are contrary to his nature, and this can lead to frustration for Charlotte. And because Charlotte is not agreeable, she'll find it natural to argue with Derek about what she may see as a rose-colored glasses perspective. Pause the video and jot down what you would suggest to Charlotte and Derek. Resume the video when you're ready to hear our thoughts. We know from their self-assessment results there are times when their emotions are not lined up well. That is, Charlotte may be anxious or angry about something, but Derek doesn't seem too concerned about it. Then step one would be for each of them to recognize this situation. We might ask Derek, what would you be on the lookout for in order to recognize when this happens? Hopefully Derek responds with accurate insights into how he can recognize when his emotions do not match Charlotte's. Then we ask Charlotte the same question. Next, we ask Derek and Charlotte to come up with ideas for how they might remind each other these different levels of emotions are part of their personality traits and how they've committed to reconciling those differences rather than getting frustrated with each other. We remind both partners an improved relationship would make both of them happier, and that accepting each other while trying to change to meet each other halfway will go a long way toward making that outcome a reality. Finally, we give them concrete suggestions for de-escalating conflict, such as reduce your own anger or frustration level, be calm, but show you understand your partner is upset. And then the three magic words, listen, listen, and listen. Listen before speaking and don't defend yourself. Rather, sincerely acknowledge your part in the situation. For our next exercise, let's meet Emma and Julian. Take a few moments to study their personality trait profiles. We're going to address the same three questions we used in the exercise with Charlotte and Derek. Again, pause the video and think through your responses to the first of these questions. Just question 1, what can we learn about this couple from their profiles? Resume the video when you're ready to go to the next slides, where we will share our thoughts on these two young people. We're going to start with Julian. What were you able to learn about him from his personality trait profile? Pause the video and make some notes if you haven't done so already. Resume the video when you're ready to hear our thoughts. What jumps out at us about this young man is his extreme extroversion. This means he's likely to talk a lot, to treat people he's just met as friends, process information verbally, and be energized by parties and large social events. His score on conscientiousness indicates he may be more easygoing than self-disciplined. He probably has some interest in art or music, but not as much as others. And Julian can be disagreeable, but his gregarious and warm nature often covers us up. He can be irritable, worried about the future and prone to mood swings. Even though he can be moody and disagreeable, because he's so extroverted, Julian is likely to have some conflict with close relationships while having fewer issues with more casual relationships. Which brings us to Emma. Compared to Julian, Emma is much more introverted. This means she's likely to be quieter and she processes new ideas and situations by pondering them rather than by talking through them with others, which is Julian's preferred strategy. She may feel drained after being with others in a social setting, unlike Julian, who is charged up by such situations. She is highly conscientious. This translates into a strong sense of responsibility. She's likely to be more prudent, and Emma wants to start new tasks right away and will usually stick with them until they're completed. She is moderately interested in artistic things and is more likely to try new things, but not to an extreme. She's more agreeable than Julian, but not by a significant margin. And Emma's moods are predominantly positive. She's concerned about the future, but believes it will be good. Her emotions are stable compared to Julian's. As we did in exercise 4, let's ask ourselves which personality traits might represent areas where this couple might experience conflict. Pause the video and think through what we learned about Emma and Julian and see if you can determine where they're likely to experience difficulties. Resume the video when you're ready to hear our perceptions. Communication between Emma and Julian may be problematic because of the steep differences in their scores on extroversion. Julian will find Emma's silence confusing, and he will resume talking rather than waiting for her to process her thoughts and share them. This will frustrate Emma. Julian's approach to chores and other tasks will likely frustrate Emma as well because he doesn't find it a priority to get things done and to do them right. Julian may perceive Emma as picky. We see these two areas as potentially making a large difference in how well they can get along, if they are willing to see these traits as something to accept in each other while working to accommodate the preferences of the other person. The easy approach would be to encourage them to meet each other halfway, but in reality, most of the changes should be made by Julian. If he can learn to listen patiently, he'll benefit from Emma's perspective on a range of issues. Even if he doesn't become as conscientious as Emma, if he can learn to value this characteristic in his partner, their relationship will improve. The trait difference that may make improving their relationship difficult is the difference in their emotional inclination. Julian tends to focus on negative emotions. He's likely to be more anxious, more irritable, and more easily angered. Emma, on the other hand, has more consistently positive emotions. So, pause the video and jot down some notes on what you would suggest to Emma and Julian. Resume the video when you're ready to continue. This young couple has some real obstacles to overcome, but they can certainly learn the skills necessary to make their relationship work. First, both of them need to acknowledge they process information and communicate differently. Understanding that Emma's quiet nature is not a sign she's losing interest in him or that she's angry with him, this will help Julian avoid unnecessary anxiety. And Julian can learn to listen more patiently as he understands silence from Emma means she's thinking, and when she does speak, her thoughts will be well worth hearing. Emma needs to remember that Julian's outgoing personality is not better than hers, it's just different. And we would suggest that she practice thinking about what she wants or prefers and finds ways to express her preferences to Julian. And encourage Julian to sincerely ask Emma what she would prefer as they make decisions together, both important and routine decisions. Finally, we would encourage Emma to use a variety of positive but accepting approaches to working out routine and non-routine issues when Julian becomes too negative. By way of a quick review before we close out this video, let's look at what we covered. We studied the secure and insecure attachment styles, noting there are 3 different insecure styles. We learned infants form models of the world primarily through interactions with their caregivers. Attachment styles show up in non-conscious behaviors, things we say and do without conscious thought. While developed in early childhood, these patterns of behavior remain with us and can significantly impact our close relationships. Only after we become aware of our non-conscious behaviors can we gain a measure of control over them. Using self-assessments is an effective way to help clients see their own attachment styles. We studied 5 personality traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, and emotional inclination. These traits are determined by what we inherit from our parents and modified by our life experiences. Like attachment styles, personality traits are revealed through the things we say and do without conscious thought. Conflicts can arise where 2 people differ significantly on a specific trait. For example, if one partner is extremely introverted and the other just as extremely extroverted, conversations between them are likely to be problematic. Again, the non-conscious behaviors that arise from our personality traits can be managed if the traits are brought to the client's conscious awareness. And, as with attachment styles, self-assessments are critical in getting individuals and couples to understand their own and their partner's personality traits.